you've been with me since the beginning, you remember that shit. Why did I always used to hold those tickets up? I think, like, back in the day, I used to do that before every single video started. Right when I began on YouTube, I would always hold out my movie ticket for everyone to see. And I think it's twofold, because I've always really liked collecting movie tickets. As you guys know, I got a binder filled with them. I've done a video about them. But I also think for some reason, I felt like I had to prove that I saw it. Like, when I first started, I was like, no one's gonna believe me that I'm seeing all these movies, so I gotta prove it by showing my ticket. So since Batman Day is officially a thing, a lot of theaters around the country showed Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises all in one day. I kind of wish that this wasn't just like a day, that they kind of made it a week or something. Not that you have to have Batman week, but just give people the chance to see all of them who can't spend an entire day in a movie theater. Make it a week. Have Monday be Batman and Batman Returns. Have Tuesday be Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday be Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises. And the best closer ever, on Saturday, have a midnight showing of Batman Forever. And on Sunday, a midnight showing of Batman and Robin. You know that a midnight crowd of crazy Batman fans watching Batman and Robin in a theater, potentially drunk or high, would be amazing.
Hi, Freeze. I'm Batman.
So I had to see The Dark Knight Rises because it was at 10:30, the end of the day, my kids are in bed, and it works out. It's my least favorite of the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, but I say that with love. Similarly to how I say that Return of the Jedi is my least favorite of the Star Wars trilogy. In fact, if I really want to get analytical about this shit, my Star Wars trilogy views are pretty much the exact same as my Dark Knight trilogy views. We've got Empire Strikes Back and The Dark Knight. Then we've got A New Hope and Batman Begins. And then Return of the Jedi and Dark Knight Rises. It's kind of crazy how they coalesce. And obviously I reviewed this movie 11 years ago when it came out, and I was a huge fan of it and just freaking out about how much I loved it. And I really wanted to go and see it again because it's been years since I've seen the film and just see if it still works and if it holds up and if I love it as much as I did. And one of the biggest reasons I felt like talking about the movie again, beyond the idea of does it still hold up or whatever, is that while watching it, I was thinking about a lot of the criticisms that are often thrown at The Dark Knight Rises, and in fact all of Christopher Nolan's movies in general, until I wasn't. Like, I stopped thinking about them completely. And that's the magic of a great film. It's why we go to the movies, isn't it? To escape, to not think about the world, about our lives, about our problems, to get fully invested into a story, and you're not sitting there going like, wasn't that guy over there before, and how did they get there, and I don't understand that. Like, that's the kind of stuff you don't want to be thinking about while you're watching a movie. You want to be emotionally swept up in it. You want to care. And The Dark Knight Rises has plenty of moments that have been scrutinized or criticized over the years. Like, how does Batman always show up in the right place at the right time? How is he on the ice with Gordon, telling him to light up some fuel that creates a Batman symbol on a fucking bridge? And then how is he 2 seconds later fighting criminals with Joseph Gordon-Levitt? How does Bruce Wayne get from the prison to Gotham when Gotham is closed down? How is Batman fleeing from every cop in Gotham City and then all of a sudden he's on a rooftop fighting with Catwoman? These are the things I hear about forever. Like, people scrutinize these things over and over again. But here's why I love what Nolan does with his movies. His films really are perfectly edited because they're designed to not allow you to think about those things while you're watching the film. He never lets you come down from a high, all the way to the end of the movie, which, of course, spoilers, if you've never seen The Dark Knight Rises, when the bomb goes off and you think Batman is dead, it's probably like 15 to 20 seconds later that Gordon is giving a speech, and we've moved on to when Batman has a statue, and you are still riding the high of, did Batman die? And did he really, okay, he really did save Gotham, great. You kind of breathe for like 2 seconds, and then you're immediately thrown into the next moment. And that's what even Oppenheimer did. The editing of Oppenheimer is so similar. You're not given a chance to wonder about a lot of the plot points that are mentioned. You are just emotionally invested in the moments. But it really made me think about the fact that a lot of the major criticisms I ever hear about the Nolan movies are usually by the time they're out on Blu-ray and we've watched the movie like 18 times, and suddenly at that point we're noticing continuity errors and plot holes, things that we weren't thinking about while we were watching the film. I've heard people go on tangents about The Dark Knight and all of the little continuity errors they've noticed with amounts of police, and why did Joker do this, and how did Batman do that? And that's the aspect of film criticism that I loathe The truth is, I love this movie so much while watching it, but every time I talk about it, I feel like I have to put my gloves up or something. I feel the same way about Temple of Doom. I've felt the same way about Signs ever since I saw it. People will go on and on about these plot holes and inconsistencies, and to me, like, the whole point of loving a movie is that you get so swept up in it that none of that matters to you because it reached you emotionally. And The Dark Knight Rises absolutely does, because the film is very risky in a lot of ways. For one, for a movie called The Dark Knight Rises, The Dark Knight doesn't do a lot of rising for a long goddamn time. I think he shows up like 45 minutes into the movie or something, which is kind of like reserved for origin stories of superheroes because they're obviously not the superhero when the movie starts and you kind of wait for them to get into the suit or whatever. The cool thing about The Dark Knight Rises is that it's kind of a hidden origin movie because he's kind of not Batman when the movie begins. In fact, Alfred is constantly telling him, like, this isn't you anymore. You're beyond this. You're going to die. Don't do this. And when he suits up as Batman, what happens? All the cops go after him instead of Bane and his men, and they can escape, so he fails in that way. Yeah, he helps Catwoman get out of her little scuffle or whatever, but that's about it. When he goes to fight Bane, he fails. He gets thrown into prison in the middle of nowhere. So, like, Alfred was kind of right. He wasn't Batman anymore. In my mind, he doesn't become Batman again until he's thrown into that prison, understands true pain and despair, unlike he's ever experienced before, and climbs out. So in a way, The Dark Knight Rises is almost like another origin story for Batman. But along with the brilliant editing, the incredible cinematography, and Hans Zimmer's booming score, the third act of this film is so thrilling that it's a shining example of why I love so many of Nolan's films, because he really is one of the very few filmmakers that can make me forget that I'm watching a movie. I become so invested in it even though I know it's going to happen, and I just give myself over to it. And I have felt that way ever since I first saw it, and watching it tonight on a theater screen for the first time in 11 years, I still feel that way. Yes, the film absolutely holds up. Yeah, it's not as good as The Dark Knight, but I respect that it's so different. Nolan's talked about how he's attributed a certain feeling to his trilogy, where Batman Begins was about fear and Dark Knight was about chaos. This film's about pain, physically and emotionally, and it absolutely pulls that off. The other thing I love about The Dark Knight Rises that often isn't talked about is how it's essentially the fulfillment of the Joker's prophecy in The Dark Knight, that when the chips are down, people will eat each other. That's exactly what happens. When all bets are off, it doesn't matter what the police can do. It doesn't matter what, the law says. When Bane comes in there with a bomb and destroys all the bridges, he declares martial law, and that's it. Everything the Joker said was true. So he was almost like this really terrifying omen predicting the future, and that just makes the film even better. So yeah, it is my least favorite of the Dark Knight trilogy. It's a bit too long. It'd be nice to see a little more Batman. There are some cheesy lines that have never worked for me, like when Bane is like, "So you came back to die with your city?" And he's like, "No, I came back to stop you." I've never liked that. I've always found it kind of like, that's the best you got. But what also doesn't get talked about enough is how damn good Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in this film. He is consistently great in every scene. And I also love the idea that his character is continuously put in places where, as a law enforcement officer, he is shown the darker side of being a law enforcement officer, and it makes him slowly not want to be one anymore. It's smart, especially with the eventual reveal at the end, which also is fantastic because Batman's constantly talking about how wearing a mask is not only to protect those who you love, but it's about being a symbol, that anybody could be a hero. And that brings it right back to his scene with Gordon, where he slyly reveals who he is. It's extremely well written. Yes, there are moments where things don't entirely make sense. There are some lines that are a little cheesy, as I said. Is Bane as good of a villain as the Joker? No. But he's still a really good villain, and Tom Hardy is so over the top and extremely fun in the role that I find him very fascinating to watch, even though all he has to use is his physicality and his eyes. Yeah, so The Dark Knight Rises definitely still holds up for me. I think it's a great movie, and even though it's not my favorite, that's okay. I loved seeing it on the theater screen. I hope that I can see Batman Begins and The Dark Knight on the big screen again one day. So guys, I'm curious if you watched any of these movies on the big screen for Batman Day. If you did, what did you think of them? Do they still hold up for you? What are your thoughts, guys? Thank you so much, as always, for watching. Look forward to more videos very soon. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.